hey, you know what name Michigan fans are going to remember now? Isaiah Barnes, because he is the first guy in the fold in the 2021 class for the Maize and Blue.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting addition, considering that he was relatively, I wouldn't say completely off the radar, but he wasn't a guy that I was really personally considering Michigan had a really good shot with. I mean, and again, taking a kid like a 4-star kid like that and having him be somewhat as a surprise addition, a surprise commitment. I mean, you definitely can't scoff at that. But yeah, it kind of, I don't want to speak for you, Sam, but I know it kind of took me by surprise a little bit, when the word came down that
Yeah, it took me by
he was
surprise.
making.
It took me by surprise that he was committing. I heard that they were in good shape. They were in good standing, but did I think that they were about to get a commitment? No, I did not.
Mhm.
So that definitely caught me by surprise. But think about how quickly they shot up the list. I mean, he was a guy who had basically kind of narrowed things down.
Mhm.
And then, Michigan comes in with the offer, and suddenly they are very much in the mix. And this is where, Josh, this is where a couple of things, a couple of narratives come into play, at least for me. Narrative number one: Juwan Howard and his Chicago recruiting ties, his pull, his juice in Chicago, if you will, right? It didn't really manifest in year one in a tangible way. I
Mhm.
mean, you went out there and Michigan got in with some Chi-Town guys, right? But they didn't get any. This time they got one. And a guy who, when you think about his game, and I remember when Michigan offered him, I got Brian Snow called me and says, Sam, this dude can't. I mean, he can go. He has so much upside. He said he's talented as crap, except he didn't say crap. Josh, he said this dude has some untapped potential, but started living up to that. Started tapping into that potential this past year. But we'll come back around to his game shortly. Let's stay with narratives. Phil Martelli. So there was, and I don't think it was unreasonable to question what kind of recruiting presence Phil Martelli was going to be, right? I mean, Phil Martelli's been, a Philly guy for basically his entire, for all intents and purposes, his entire coaching career. He's been a Philly guy. He's been recruiting at the St. Joe's level for the entirety of his career. He even joked about it in our first time we interviewed him. He said, "Yeah, how you go to the AAU tournament, you get the recruiting guide, and they got all the guys listed." He said, "I would always flip to the back of that book because
Yep.
I
I was
wasn't
there.
getting
I
the,
remember that.
I wasn't even setting my mind to dream about the guys on the first 50, 60, 70 pages. I got to flip all the way to the back to find the guys that I might be able to recruit." So it was reasonable to wonder what his recruiting impact would be stepping up to a stage like Michigan as an assistant, no less. And Josh, whether you look at last year, Terrence Williams, for instance, kind of getting Michigan in that mix. You look at this year and how Michigan is resonating with Jalen Warley. You mentioned Angelo Brizzi, right, that he got Michigan in with. And, I did some digging. And while certainly Juwan and the Chicago roots and ties should be lauded and celebrated and praised in its responsibility for helping lure Isaiah Barnes into the fold, I've been told that Phil Martelli was all over this recruitment too. So here you have a guy in very short order that is bucking whatever trend people thought was going to continue with him as an assistant at Michigan. He's completely bucked that trend and shown himself to be a presence on the recruiting trail for the Maize and Blue, just like he's a presence on the bench for Juwan Howard.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the least surprising thing that you could say all day is that Phil Martelli has made an imprint on another kid. Maybe more on the surprising side that it's from Illinois because we hear a lot about these East Coast kids, and like that Phil Martelli is all over it, which is obvious because he's an East Coast guy. But now if you can get Phil Martelli involved with kids all over the country, I mean, now you're talking about a brand new game of recruiting here, because Phil's just so good at it and is so good at building relationships. So having him all over the country now, and now you've got tangible evidence that it's working, that's dangerous. It's very dangerous.